This is the 9th annual Murrow Forum. Each year, the Murrow Forum takes on a different and timely topic. It has established a tradition of hosting outstanding experts. Over the past 8 years, we have been fortunate to have held programs headlined by Ted Koppel, Dan Rather, Tom Brokaw, Chris Matthews, Katie Couric, Brian Williams, Christiane Amanpour, and Edward R. Murrow's son, Casey Murrow, who is here with us today. This is one of the most important events of the academic year. It is significant and appropriate to hold this event here at Tufts as our approach to teach media and journalism within the context of a liberal arts education. And we do so with a lens on active citizenship and public service, both locally and globally. We believe this is critical to preparing the next generation of leaders for a changing world. It is also essential to ensure intelligent media consumption and inspiring media production. Hosting this forum at Tufts is also distinctive because of Tufts' special connection to Edward R. Murrow. His distinguished reporting and analysis of world news and his imaginative leadership of the United States Information Agency set a standard of excellence in the field. Holding the Murrow Forum at Tufts strengthens the vital connections between the past, present, and future of the media. And I am sure today's discussion of the digital frontier in journalism will give us all food for thought. Now I am pleased to introduce Julie Dobro. Dr. Dobro, who is director of our program in Communications and Media Studies, will introduce our distinguished speakers. Thank you.
Thank you, President Monaco. The Communications and Media Studies program, along with the Edward R. Murrow Center for Public Diplomacy at the Fletcher School of Law and Diplomacy, and the Tisch College of Citizenship and Public Service are once again pleased to be sponsoring this year's Murrow Forum. Edward R. Murrow was among the most renowned figures in the history of American broadcast journalism. His work on radio and television for the CBS network reshaped the American media landscape. Today, we still look upon Murrow as the standard bearer for much of journalism. His stellar interviewing skills, his sparse eloquence, his tenacity continue to inspire new legions of journalists in this digital age of reporting. In the Murrow tradition of insightful and incisive interviewing skills, I'm so very pleased that we'll be able to welcome Jonathan Tisch back here today as a participant in this year's Murrow Forum. One of the things that characterized Murrow's approach as a journalist was that as technology changed, he was there ready to try it, embrace it, and see how it could be used to convey both news and opinion. In his day, Murrow never shied away from the difficult story, nor did he veer away from telling stories in ways that were entertaining. Now, he was criticized for some of the emotionally laden images that were shown in his award-winning television documentary, Harvest of Shame. And some of his contemporary peers took him to task for interviewing celebrities on the air. But to Murrow, news was a very broad net. So when I announced that this year's Murrow speaker would be Arianna Huffington, our own student newspaper suggested that Murrow would unlikely recognize her as someone in the traditional mold of a journalist. I think they're right. But I also believe that Edward R. Murrow would have embraced our selection of Arianna Huffington as this year's speaker because she, like he, is a true journalistic innovator. So please join me in welcoming Jonathan Tisch and Arianna Huffington.
It seems like we're sort of going in two different directions. People do want to learn more. They want to know what's going on in their community. They want to feel better about themselves. But do they really spend that much time reading?
I think I think we have these two worlds coexisting right now. I mean, I think attention deficit disorder is a huge problem. I think our addiction to technology is a huge problem. And I was talking to another Tufts alum, Murrow Media, who actually was saying to me that that technology is not accidentally addictive, he said. We deliberately make it addictive. He said, as a coder, I can tell you how we make it addictive. So I think that's a good thing for us to remember here. You should tell him you should have him come back and tell us how he makes it addictive, so we can dispel the spell. But I think we need to learn to actually disconnect from technology in order to connect with ourselves, our wisdom, and our ability to go deeper into subjects. And that's why, in fact, now, ironically, there are new apps and new features that are helping us push the pause button. I mean, like, a popular app is called Antisocial, that can put all your incoming mail, social media on hold while you're writing, say. I don't know if any students here are using it, but I highly recommend it. Or even a simple feature on your iPhone that's called Do Not Disturb. So we are beginning to recognize the danger that you've identified, the danger of being constantly distracted. And indeed, I think the people who will win the future are the people who can stay alone in a room without their Facebook, Twitter, or even the Huffington Post, if you can bear it.
When you hear the term citizen journalist, what do you think of?
Well, first of all, I think of the people in the early days of using this term. I remember being on a panel with Barry Diller, and he said to me, "Is this like a citizen brain surgeon?" And that was the idea, that citizen journalism is an oxymoron. That if you're a journalist, you're a professional, you have to be trained, you have to know what you're doing, and it should not be left to amateurs. And I think our concept of citizen journalists are people who can completely revere the traditions of journalism. Fact-checking, fairness, all those things that we revere are essential if you're going to be a citizen journalist, that worthy of the title. But beyond that, there are people who can write and speak from their own immediate experience, or because they love a topic and they can delve deeply into it, and they strengthen democracy. I think there are many ways to strengthen democracy, and uncovering corruption and dysfunctionality and speaking truth to power are very important, but also I think being able to put the spotlight on good things happening, or allowing citizens to have their own expression is another way to strengthen democracy. Which is when I say if you want to write for HuffPost, it does not have to be exclusive. Because you can also post it on your college paper or anywhere else you want. So that's where HuffPost is like a distribution platform. In fact, I was talking to a student earlier here who is writing a thesis on women in journalism. And I said, well, you may want to start blogging part of your thesis and inviting the community to send you their stories and their ideas, which is another way to actually advance your research. So these are all these tools that we have available to us. And they completely can coexist with the best traditions of journalism.
Do you think we're at a dangerous moment with technology, the internet, with young people, with anonymity, the ease that you can defame a classmate, hurt a friend? Does that concern you as somebody who is so involved in technology?
It does concern me, and that's one of the reasons we ended anonymity. I think everybody should take a stand here, because it's, I think, if you believe that we are all a mixture of the better angels of our nature and the darker parts of human nature, I think when we use anonymity, it brings out the worst in people. And very often with very dangerous consequences.
Are you amazed that people continue to want to write for you for free?
No, not at all, because because I think In the same way that I'm not amazed that people continue to want to update Wikipedia entries for free, or continue to update their own Facebook profiles for free, or have Tumblr blogs. You see, this is the nature of online platforms. And that's why I think what is different is that it doesn't have to be exclusive, that the person writing has no deadlines. You know, they may write something tomorrow and then write something in a year. Nobody's going to call them and say, hey, you haven't written anything in a year. That we have literally thousands of submissions that our editors have to go through, because HuffPost is not a free-for-all. And so we have a lot of bloggers who have their own passwords and can blog anytime they want because we trust them. But if you're new, you have to go through this process. And for me, what is great is that this is an additional platform. That's how our bloggers see it. They own the rights, they can turn them into a book, they can publish them elsewhere, and that's why we have tens of thousands of them. And now often we will also translate the best of our blog posts in other languages.
What advice do you give young people about just starting out thinking that this is something that you want to pursue?
I think this is, as you said earlier, a golden age for journalism, and I think that starting, if you're interested in applying at the Huffington Post, we have a great fellows program, a paid fellows program, I hasten to add, where for 3 or 6 months you get to see everything we're doing at HuffPost, see what sections interest you. We had 10,000 applications last year. We hired 90 fellows, and we hired most of them, I think with the exception of 3, full-time employees after that. So it's just, I feel it's great if you're starting as a journalist, unless you're absolutely clear what particular field you want to pursue, to actually get, be exposed to the whole waterfront, and also all the digital tools at your disposal. I mean, every one of our editors has a kind of dashboard we've developed where they can see immediately how their stories are doing. They can do A/B testing of headlines. So if they have a story that they really believe in. So this is, again, it's important to use all these tools to make journalism better, as opposed to just follow the lowest common denominator. So you can use the tools to say, I have this great story on youth unemployment, and it's not getting a lot of traction. Let me change the headline. Let me change the picture. Let me change the pull quotes. And then you see immediately how it's resonating. So it's great to be able to have this immediate feedback that in the past, you had the front page meeting in a newspaper, you decide what's the headline going to be, but you wouldn't have the chance to change it, because the headline would have been the headline. Now you can change it, and our editors are trained to come up with headlines that are also playful and a little humorous. Like one of my favorites was when Dominic Strauss-Kahn was arrested, and our headline was OMG IMF.
DSK.
DSK, yes. You would make a good HuffPost editor.
I read the Post a lot. You really are a journalist in your being. You are a journalist, and there are so many similarities in talking to you, to thinking back to Edward R. Murrow. And he was, as Julie mentioned briefly in her comments, he was using the new technology of his time to basically do what you're using the new technology of our time to do, and that's educate people.
I think there is another similarity, which is that he was incredibly persistent. I mean, one of the things I most admire about him is the way he would just stick to a story and develop it and go deeper into a story, which was something actually that a lot of mainstream journalists kind of abandoned. I mean, you would see big stories break on the front pages of newspapers and almost like die there. And the great thing about online journalism is it's easy to stay on a story and keep developing it. You may not have the big breaking news every day on that story, but you can develop it with the latest that's happened, getting people to comment, and therefore stories can stay alive longer than before.
What was the impetus? What was the moment where you said, this is the book I need to write now?
It's been a long moment because it started 7 years ago when I collapsed from exhaustion, burnout, and sleep deprivation. 2 years into launching the Huffington Post, and I broke my cheekbone, got 4 stitches on my right eye, and it started me asking these big questions that we ask in college, like what is a good life, what is success, and then often we stop asking them. And we allow the world to define success as just its 2 legs, money and power. And as I came to, I thought to myself, by conventional definitions of success, I may be successful, but if you're lying in a pool of blood on the floor of your office, you are not successful by any sane definition of success. So that's when this idea started. And then I looked around, John, and I saw, and I'm sure you know a lot of people who are unbelievably burnt out. They would be successful by conventional definitions, but their health has been impaired. Their capacity to make wise decisions has been impaired. I mean, it's not just about our health, it's about leadership. Because I think if you're disconnected from your own wisdom and you're just focusing on your to-do list and getting stuff done, it's just amazing how many leaders now that we see around us are very smart with maybe great degrees, but what they lack is wisdom. And we saw that around the financial meltdown. Didn't you wonder where were all the CEOs and the executives, what were they doing? Maybe they did need 8 hours sleep. Maybe they might have noticed the icebergs before they hit the Titanic, which is after all a definition of leadership. And I was at the University of Miami last week and talking to Donna Shalala, who was the longest serving HSS secretary under Clinton. She said to me, the way the Clinton White House operated was chaotic. She said, I would sleep with my briefing books because the president might call me anytime at midnight. Alan, are you nodding? To ask me about Medicare, some recondite Medicare clause that he was interested in. And he said, it doesn't have to be that way. And in fact, I quote Clinton in the book saying, every mistake I made when I was tired. He did not specify what mistakes. But my point is that when we give ourselves time to renew ourselves, to regenerate ourselves, to reconnect with the wisdom in us and the deeper parts of ourselves, we're going to be more effective as leaders, better at whatever it is we want to do. At the same time that we realize that our jobs, however magnificent and grand, do not fully define us. That's not all we are. And so asking these big questions, and just one more thing that I thought the other day, I was at a friend's memorial, and when you listen to a eulogy, you sort of realize that a eulogy is not a resume. Have you ever been to a memorial and you heard someone say, George was amazing, he increased market share by 1/3. So I think it's important to remember that as we make choices through the life. And I had a great conversation with your president here, who, as a student at Harvard, was actually taught to meditate by Professor Benson, who was working at the time on the power of meditation to reconnect us with ourselves. And now, this is the tipping point that's so exciting. We have scientific evidence to back up a lot of ancient wisdom, which otherwise might have been seen as more flaky and new agey and not something serious and mainstream. And now we see the connections with a lot of data behind them.
Do you still love signing books? This is your 14th. Do you still get the adrenaline rush by having people stand there, take a picture now?
You know what I love the most is when people tell me stories. Even like in a minute, you can hear people's stories. And one of the things I've been hearing more than anything else on my book too is what one woman in San Francisco said, I don't remember the last time I was not tired. And I think it's like this collective delusion that we are under, that somehow the only way to succeed is to burn out. And I hear all the stories that I'm collecting on the tour, often while I'm signing books. And I hear you like signing books too, right?
I've had 3 of them, so I got a long way to go to catch up to you. Let's open it up for some questions from the audience. We have microphones. If you can give your name and maybe if you're a student or live in the community. I'm sure Arianna would love to hear from you.
I'm listening to your revenue model about numbers, aggregating more and more people, inviting people in, building your numbers. What do you say to niche publications, which have been so fantastic in the print world, but online it's a bigger challenge when you really don't have that kind of, the 90 million is a goal. We'd love to get there, but what would you say to a niche publisher?
Well, first of all, I think I'm so happy you're dealing with this demographic, because I think women and men over 50 really want to keep expressing themselves and reinventing themselves. And we just launched, we have a section, as you know, HuffPost 50, and we launched a literary competition, invited people to submit memoirs, and we had like 2,500 submissions, and it's been really amazing to see the creativity. And I think that one of the things that has worked for us, and I think would work for a niche online publication, has to do with identifying brands that want to reach this demographic by actually focusing on the cause of the brand. Like we have a series of sponsored sections called What is Working. The first one was picked by Johnson & Johnson 4 years ago, and it's all on global maternal health because that's their main corporate cause. And it's been amazing because it includes news around global maternal health, blogs, commentary, and it says transparently sponsored by Johnson & Johnson. So if you can identify things that brands are interested in, wellness, of course, is a big one now, we're talking about that. And one, for example, of our brands on the wellness products, I'm sorry to say, so it's the Westin hotel chain.
It's okay. A friendly competitor.
And so I think identifying things and looking, every brand now has a cause.
Right.
And it's becoming more and more important to them. And if you can connect, the cause of the brand with the demographic that you reach, I think it could be a good revenue model.
You talked about a snake in the garden with digital media, and I personally think that's a huge problem, especially when it comes to reporting crime. And we've seen that in the past few years that the media, especially digital media, can really affect the public perception of someone who's accused of committing a crime and hence can affect the outcome. How do you think you achieve a balance of reporting the news and making sure people know what's happening and making sure it doesn't do something like affect people's public perception or opinions of a case, for example?
Well, in fact, I just saw a play about that last night by Scott Burns that Steven Soderbergh just directed at the Public Theatre, and it opened last night, called Library, that is precisely about what you are saying, when there are accusations about someone that don't turn out to be true. Now, this is a problem that is exacerbated by digital media, but it has existed throughout human history, of course. We've had people falsely accused, and even in a village where there are no media, the word can spread and the person can be scapegoated and ostracized. So it's not a new problem, but it's a problem that, although exacerbated by digital media, the advantage of digital media is that the truth can also rise to the top faster. So if you can actually contradict a false impression or a false rumor, that, and then make sure that that is shared and spread, that can also, it's the only weapon we have. We're not going to ever stop rumors and falsehoods from circulating, but it's a question of how quickly can we correct them.
Thank you.
We have time for 2 more questions. We'll take one on each side.
Hi Arianna, thanks a lot for speaking. I'm Josh, I'm a senior here. I've been writing for the school newspaper here throughout my undergraduate experience. It's been really great. And I guess my sort of broad question is, can you speak to your own experience as a student reporter, or working for a college newspaper, however it may be? And how do you think you've been able to put some of the lessons and experiences that you had during that time into practice now that you're where you are in the world now?
When I was a student reporter, it was the Middle Ages.
Well, Gutenberg had invented the press by then, right?
But journalism was different, and yet there are many things that remain the same. And one of the things that I learned in my experience that has remained completely true is that people love stories. And being able to put flesh and blood on the data is key. So it's like, I may tell you there are 20 million people out of work, but if I can tell you the story of one person and what that means and can help you connect with that story, that can be transformational in terms of your own awareness. So that's the kind of thing that I think as a journalist, as you transfer your skills to your profession, would be the most useful.
Thanks.
Sir.
Hi, my name's Alex. I'm a senior. I'm also a journalist. I'm not texting. I wrote down my question. So traditional journalists say that they give people what they need, and what they need is hard news. And though soft news is part of the consumption guide, it's a much smaller piece. As a journalist entity, you've posted on Snowden, on Morsi, on Obamacare, but you've also posted posts like 9 things you probably didn't know about sneezing. So what do you see as your role as a journalist? Is it to give people what they need, what they want, or a combination of that, or something else completely?
I think we see ourselves as covering everything, and also covering everything politically from a perspective that we call beyond left and right. Like, we're not cheerleading anyone. We have been very, very critical of the Obama administration's deportation policies, of the Obamacare rollout, etc., etc. But at the same time, if people want to read about Kim Kardashian, let them read about Kim Kardashian. I mean, I don't personally read about Kim Kardashian unless I want to check what my editors are doing. But you don't have to. I mean, the great thing is that, it's all there. On the Huffington Post, there's a very clear architecture of the page. So you have the splash, which is what we consider the important news of the moment, which may be different the next hour. The left-hand side are the blogs. The middle is all the hard news, politics, business, international, and the right is the what would be called the back of the book, where you have entertainment and comedy and lifestyle and the arts. And a lot of it is more significant than other parts of it, but we are finding that the kind of story like 15 ways to know you're an introvert, I mean, it's just the kind of story that people love to read, and often it can give them some insights. Being able to capture that depth of human experience and to translate it in one form or another is one of the deepest things we can do. And the power of words to communicate that is something truly extraordinary. And that's why obviously Edward R. Murrow had that gift in a way which touched millions of people, and that's why we never forget those people and those stories.
It's certainly a very appropriate way to end. And on behalf of Tufts University, we thank you for your candor, your humor, your honesty, and for joining us today. Thank you all.